What is going on, everybody? We have made it, the final draft video of the 2020 NFL draft season. I want to thank everyone that's been along for the ride. This is our final stop for the draft coverage. This has been amazing. Everyone that's shown your support, whether it's from the get-go, whether you're just coming in for this video, it's your first one. I want to thank everyone. The support's been just amazing, from the live streams to watching these videos, everything. Patreon, like all of you guys, this has been such a ride. A lot has gone into this, but I'm really proud of everything that's really transpired to this last moment here leading up to the draft. I'm gonna like shed a tear here. This is really the dream for me, and I'm so lucky to have supporters like you and to be able to do this for a living. So let's nail this one in, the final divisional draft grade of this season, and then we can start looking forward to doing a Madden rebuild with these rookies and the new roster that I'm hoping to have out on like Friday. A lot of you guys are asking about that. I'm going to get to work on it. Definitely going to take a little breather at some point here, but it is coming. And then get the Panthers rebuild going. The deep dives will start up. So, we'll catch our breath here and then we'll pick things back up. But again, guys, thank you for everything. Let's hop in here. The Indianapolis Colts, a fun draft. They acquired DeForest Buckner with their first round pick, which I think is an excellent move. We don't really factor that in here. We're really just analyzing what they did with the picks they had. But that was a fairly recent trade. You just count that as DeForest Buckner, and if we were looking at it that way, that would definitely increase the grade. But we are just grading the picks that they did ultimately make. But before we do grade the picks that they ultimately made, I do have one comment before we dive into this in depth. Jordan Love was slipping. I just released my film breakdown that I released in January on Jordan Love, one of his games that I reviewed, of his many games. I think Green Bay capitalized on it. The fall of Jordan Love. I think he's a guy that can come in and sit exactly what they're hoping to do with Jacob Eason, but an actually really good quarterback prospect in Jordan Love. They clearly just, probably weren't crazy about him, and that's fine. I could very well be wrong, but it's just a note that I would be very ecstatic about this class if they maybe use that third pick in 202 or that third pick in 209 to come up. You wouldn't get Julian Blackmon. Maybe he would fall to your fourth pick instead of Jacob Eason instead. Who knows? Just a note that personally I would have been moving up to try and get Jordan Love, and maybe they just saw that totally out of left field and didn't think Green Bay would do it and thought they could get him at 202. But anyway, let's actually finally talk about the draft picks that they did make now that we're 5 minutes into this video. They grabbed Michael Pittman, that big-bodied threat here. He is not unlike Mike Williams for Phillip Rivers. He'll be a great target as well for whoever does take over the starter in the future. I think it's an excellent pick. He's kind of the missing piece to this offense, right? You've got your speedy outside threat there in T.Y. Hilton. You got Paris Campbell, who you spent a second-round pick on last year. So you really have some good weapons cooking here for Phillip Rivers and the future. And then they grabbed Jonathan Taylor, and a lot of Colts fans got mad at me when I said that the Colts might spend an early-round pick at running back. And this is one of those teams that we've talked about where they have a pretty loaded roster. Like, it's going to be hard here in the second round to upgrade. They've got capable starters kind of across the board. But running backs, you can find value in the second round. Like, Jonathan Taylor is a first-round talent. Like, positional value is obviously included there, but he's one of the probably 32, 35 best players in this class. He adds an X factor to this run game that, frankly, Marlon Mack really doesn't. Marlon Mack's a really good player. He's a low-end starting caliber running back who's really capitalized on a great situation here with a good offensive line and good play calling. But Jonathan Taylor can be that Nick Chubb here. It really reminds me of the Browns taking Nick Chubb, and he can lead the league in rushing as a rookie, quite frankly. They still will use Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines on passing downs, but I think the Colts had the luxury to take Jonathan Taylor, and it makes a ton of sense because Phillip Rivers is not going to come out and just spread the ball all over the place and have some top 10 offense here. This team has a lot of potential with that offensive line to control the clock, run the ball, move the ball efficiently, nickel and dime you with these different weapons, and then play great defense. Jonathan Taylor is going to allow you to do that a lot easier than Marlon Mack just because he's going to fight for yards tougher. He's going to run through more arm tackles. He's even going to break some of these to the house that Marlon Mack wasn't doing. So it's a really exciting pick. This is basically where the Jags in this division should have looked to add Leonard Fournette. He's almost the same player. So excellent pick for the Colts there. I love that one. And then they grabbed Julian Blackmon, who's one of my favorite players in this class, tore his ACL at the end of the season at Utah, filling the void, converting from corner to free safety. Marquise Blair left in the second round last year to the Seahawks. Marcus Williams a couple years before that. The safeties coming out of this spot have been productive in college, looked great in college, been great athletes, and transitioned to the NFL. And I don't see that being any different with Julian Blackmon, who, quite frankly, at Utah was a better player than both of those guys. If he could have gone through the pre-draft process and worked out and gone to the combine, I think he would have been an early second round pick. So he's got an ACL to recover from, but he'll be healthy around September and October. My one question here is, I do see him as a free safety. And this team's run kind of that cover 3 scheme. It's traditionally not a scheme that runs a lot of two high safeties. They've got Malik Hooker up there as that ball-hawking, rangy free safety. Do they not want to pay Malik Hooker long-term potentially? Do they want to use Malik Hooker more as a strong safety? Was this just a value pick, get the best player? I think there's a lot of different scenarios that this could lead to. I don't want to speculate too much. But to be honest, in this scheme, there really is not room for both Malik Hooker and Julian Blackmon unless they move Hooker to more of a strong safety, which I don't know if that's the best move. Just a note, I found it interesting that I thought I'd share on that one. Then they grabbed Jacob Eason. I could sit here and talk about Jacob Eason for a long time, or I could just cut it short and say he's a freak arm. He fell because he just doesn't have it between the ears. Why a guy like Jacob Eason falls to the 4th round while Justin Herbert goes in the top 10, that point is beyond me. I had a 2nd to 3rd round grade on Herbert, a 3rd to a 4th round on Jacob Eason. There's upside there. He's got a great situation to sit and develop. I talked about the upside of going for a Jordan Love, because if Jacob Eason was going to make it anywhere, it just might be here. I've mocked Jake Fromm to this team on day 2. And I get what they're thinking in that, Phillip Rivers is our starter. We do have Jacoby Brissett, who is that bridge backup. If Jake Fromm's going to be a Jacoby Brissett type of player anyway, what's the point of that? But Jacob Eason here has the upside with that arm in theory. So I understand it. I don't personally think he will work out, but the process is totally worth it because you really just never know with these quarterbacks. Jacob Eason only started 1 year at Washington. There could be something to uncork there in the 4th round. So I think it's worth a shot, especially when this roster is as good as it is. Then, just a bunch of kind of depth plays. Guys they clearly like that I wasn't as high on. So Danny Pinter out of Ball State, he is a really good athlete. I like the process there in the 5th round. They've got Mark Galinsky at right guard. This guy's a similar player. Could learn for a year and eventually take over. Robert Windsor, an athletic interior defensive lineman, a high character guy. Isaiah Rodgers, a really quick kind of slot wide receiver that I think could potentially eventually replace the slot corner here, Kenny Moore. I like Kenny Moore, but maybe eventually he replaces him. I don't know. Desmond Patton, kind of insurance for Michael Pittman, another big-bodied, really solid hands, good contested catch guy. Not the athlete, the route runner that Michael Pittman is, but is insurance there. They clearly want that Mike Williams in this system for Phillip Rivers, and then the Jordan Glasgow, a safety linebacker hybrid out of Michigan. So the draft as a whole I liked. I gave it a B+. I don't know if if you're not including the DeForest Buckner situation, which you can look at this how you want. I don't think they're walking out of this with franchise cornerstone players. Obviously the running back is nice, but really solid draft for the Indianapolis Colts. Then we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Here we go. Lots to talk about here. C.J. Henderson, simply put, they stay there at 9. They get an excellent corner with great athleticism who played the same system at Florida. So plug and play, cover 3 corner there for C.J. Henderson. Really good impress as well. Can be that Jalen Ramsey replacement here. And then you got to replace Yannick Ngakoue here. They do it with almost an identical prospect in Kayvon Chesson, who is the same explosive, about the same size, is quote-unquote undersized, but has power, kind of despite the fact that you wouldn't expect it at his size. So seamless replacements for the guys you've lost here. I really like those picks. The values were excellent. Then you grab Laviska Shenault in the middle of the 2nd round. I kind of expected him to fall with all the injury stuff, with the COVID situation. It was just a risk to take this guy in the 1st round with the medical question marks. But if he's healthy, this is like them getting Myles Jack in the 2nd round years ago because of medical concerns as well. I love this fit so much too, because you have DJ Chark as the deep threat here. They're clearly kind of re-cementing some faith in Gardner Minshew, at least for this season. A big deal with Gardner Minshew, though, is he's not a vertical, open up the whole field, send the ball downfield type of guy. And he's young. Like, you want to manufacture touches for him in the short to intermediate game. You want to run bubble screens, jet sweeps, creative stuff. Laviska Shenault is that piece that they don't have. Even a guy who is athletic like Dede Westbrook doesn't bring that run after catch threat that Laviska Shenault does, which is truly elite. So I think this is a great last piece. I just took him in one of my dynasty leagues in the second round. Like, I'm pretty pumped. I think he's really going to get featured a lot in this offense, because as good as DJ Chark and Gardner Minshew are in their own ways, they're not exactly meant for each other, right? Minshew doesn't have this amazing deep ball to really make the most of DJ Chark. So to get this defense restored and then get a really critical piece to help the short to intermediate game become much more efficient and explosive, I think those 3 picks are excellent win now moves for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then you grab Devon Hamilton in the 3rd round. I had a 4th round grade on him just because he is that true run stuffer, doesn't offer much as a pass rusher, just doesn't have the get off and explosiveness, but really strong, controls his gap. Ironically, my comparison for him was Avery Jones. So you get a nice Avery Jones filler here. They really struggled against the run. Jags fans told me, you can't pass on Derek Brown at pick 9. Well, he wasn't there anyway, but I think getting a guy like Devon Hamilton in the 3rd is probably a better pick than Derek Brown in the 1st if your main goal is just to stop the run. Like, you can get these guys pretty much at ease, whether it's in the 3rd round of the draft or pick up the 12 guys in free agency. So I like the thinking here. Don't take that position too early. It's not necessary if your priority is to get a run stuffer there. Then Ben Bartch in the 4th round. I really like this. I think he's got a real chance to start either at left tackle or right guard. He's a really nice player. Coming out of a Division III school, it's hard to really say what kind of player you're getting here, but he really impressed at the Senior Bowl. He was a buzz name, and I think this is an excellent spot to take him because both left tackle and right guard, you've got guys that can play, but you're not too excited about Cam Robinson or A.J. Cannon. I think Ben Bartch is really going to pressure both of those guys and get the most out of those 2 players. And this is just overall another great win now move that is going to improve this offensive line, whether he starts or not. And then Josiah Scott, a slot corner here. I think he will start in the slot. He is an excellent playmaker. Now, he played a little bit on the outside. This team has a height cutoff at corner within this press scheme. He is absolutely a slot corner here. That is going to have DJ Hayden kick outside. Hayden's actually been better in the slot than on the outside. So you could debate if this is better than taking like Bryce Hall, for example, who would probably start on the outside and then make the most out of DJ Hayden. But I'm not going to fault it. Like, I think Josiah Scott's an excellent slot corner, and DJ Hayden's probably not a long-term answer for this team anyway. Then you grab Shaquille Quarterman. He's probably going to be a factor on base packages. He's kind of that heat-seeking, run-stuffing lineman. He gets sideline to sideline nice. He's not a complete liability in coverage. I thought it was a solid pick. That's right around where I had him going in the 4th round. Then Daniel Thomas. I think Daniel Thomas is a much, much better strong safety than a lot of guys that we've talked about in these draft grades videos. Guys like Brandon Jones out of Texas, the California guy that the Falcons took, for example. I think Daniel Thomas is just faster, flies more to the ball, has more coverage upside because of that athleticism. Frankly, played better at a higher level of competition at Auburn in the SEC. I look at the strong safety position here with Ronnie Harrison, who just is not very good. I think Daniel Thomas is a sleeper here in the 5th round to push Ronnie Harrison to even start there. Now, he did show a lot of inconsistency in coverage as far as route recognition and knowing when to kind of gamble and when to be more conservative, but there's something there in Daniel Thomas out of Auburn. Then you grab another big body out of Texas, Colin Johnson. I'm not sure they don't see him as a tight end project to convert here. You grab Jake Luton out of Oregon State, who a lot of people had penciled in Anthony Gordon as this year's Gardner Minshew. My kind of long shot 6th round quarterback that I was much higher on this year was Jake Luton. I think he saw the field extremely well. He threw with anticipation. He actually did some things with his feet, even though he's not an excellent athlete. I liked his game a lot. He was throwing with a ton of anticipation. He seemed like a really smart quarterback, and he had transferred from some small school, I think. Like, he was a grad transfer which I want to say Gardner Minshew was too. So we only really got the 1 year. Now he does not have a good arm, but neither does Gardner Minshew. So I think they see almost the same player that they evaluated in Gardner Minshew and said, let's take him again to back up Gardner. So keep an eye on Jake Luton. There's obviously no lock. He's a 6th round pick, but I like Jake Luton, and no one really talked about him, but his tape really impressed me. Then they grabbed Tyler Davis, kind of a blocking tight end out of that triple option offense there in Georgia Tech. They don't really pass the ball, so maybe there is something untapped as a receiver. Who really knows? He was not originally on my tight end board. So a dart throw at tight end, and then you grab a long shot corner out of Memphis here in the 7th round. So overall, really like the Jacksonville Jaguars draft. I think the first really 5 picks were kind of home runs here. A lot of upside, restoring a lot of, I don't know if I want to say glory to this team, but I think they did it the right way here. They're doing a good job letting Gardner Minshew figure out, if he is the guy. I think we all probably know he's not, but they're going to give him a chance here. And then they can think about quarterback next year if he's not. Then the Houston Texans. So we're really not going to get into this thing here. They just paid Laramie Tunsil $22 million a year after trading 2 first-rounders and a 2nd round next year. Their draft next year is going to look just like this, a very short list. They traded a 2nd round pick for Brandon Cooks, even though they have 2 other deep threats on the roster. They acquired a 2nd round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. I think that they've already kind of failed this draft before it started, but we're going to analyze the picks that they made because that's what we're here for. So they grabbed Ross Blacklock. I will say it's about as good as they could have done here. Texans fans told me they weren't going to go into your defensive lineman, even though you look at that roster and it's literally like the biggest hole on the roster. You basically just have J.J. Watt, who's not even a true interior defensive lineman. He plays a little bit of both. So this was obvious. This is where the value in the draft was, too. Blacklock, my number 3 interior defensive lineman. I think that's a great pick. I think he's an excellent scheme fit. Going to play some 3-tech here. Local guy out of TCU. So I love that pick. Sucks to trade DeAndre Hopkins for a defensive tackle, but he will help this team right away. Then they grabbed Jonathan Greener towards the end of the 3rd round. That was a need to go edge. It's not a particularly good edge class. I just don't really see Jonathan Greener being much of an impact at the next level. I think he's an okay player. He's got some good pass rushing skill set to him. He just lacks that explosiveness to be a true starting edge in the NFL, I think. He's to me like a 3rd edge guy, which, to be fair, you have J.J. Watt, you have Whitney Merciless. You really only need a 3rd edge guy. I'm not too thrilled about it in the 3rd round. It's not a bad pick. Anything that I give better than a C, I think, is a quality pick. So, it's fine. I'm just not super excited about it. They grabbed Charlie Hack, was a reach by my evaluations, a pretty major reach, actually. It was my 25th offensive tackle. Also not a crazy need. I just don't think taking him in the 4th round, he's going to really change anything here. I'm not even sure he's going to be on this team for too long based on what I saw from him. Then they grabbed John Reed, a good player at Penn State. Could use another body in the secondary there, so B- for that pick. And then Isaiah Coulter in the 5th round. They got a lot of bodies at wide receiver. It's going to be hard for him to sort his way through, but he is an interesting athlete out of Rhode Island, and he does not need to play right away at all. He's got some good mentors in front of him. So I think they look at this team and say, we got those guys in place right now, but Kenny Stills, even Will Fuller, we don't know if they're going to be here forever. Brandon Cooks got some injury concerns, so maybe Isaiah Coulter with that speed can develop and fill that role in this offense down the road. So I don't hate that pick either. With what they had, I think they did about the most that they could. I really like the Ross Blacklock pick. So the draft grade is actually going to be a B based on what they had to work with. They're not walking out of this like dancing for joy or anything, but I don't think they butchered the draft or anything. But at the end of the day, I think you're really just walking out of this with Ross Blacklock. Not a bad haul. There's been worse drafts that you literally get nothing, but it's just a little hard to look at this team in the face after you could have had so much more before a lot of these trades. Then Tennessee, our very last one here. We got 6 picks. They grab Isaiah Wilson at the end of the 1st round. Was it the best value? No, but I think it's exactly what they needed. They love to run the ball. They have a pretty big issue at right guard and right tackle. So Conklin's gone. Dennis Kelly can play. They got Nate Davis, a rookie from last year who really struggled. So Isaiah Wilson, I actually moved him to guard on my board about 10 days before the draft, and I see him as an upgrade day one at guard here. At tackle, he really struggled. I think if he's going to play tackle, he needs to sit. And maybe he is a guy that is a guy that just sits behind Dennis Kelly and starts in the future. I think ideally what you get here is him to start at guard. And this is pretty rare. You don't see it too often. But I think he could start at guard, and then Dennis Kelly can play for a little bit. But as Isaiah Wilson comes along, maybe he does eventually replace Dennis Kelly at right tackle, and you figure out a different guard to play there. I do not really believe in Nate Davis. I think he really struggled last year. He was a weak link on that offensive line. So I think your best line for next season, obviously a win-now team, is going to be Wilson at right guard and Dennis Kelly at right tackle. Interested to see how they decide to use him there. But the pick as a whole, I think, was really good. He's an explosive offensive lineman. Then Christian Fulton, one of the better picks in this entire draft. Now, Mike Vrabel's kind of a fifth name in the Belichickian coaching tree. The difference is he doesn't run the exact same scheme. He's kind of been doing his own thing, more of a traditional 3-4 defense. But some of those principles are still there, and he's still looking at his old mentor, Bill Belichick, to take some stuff from. They want to run a lot of man coverage here, and Christian Fulton, to me, was actually the second best man cover corner in this entire class. To get him at the end of the second round, a good athlete, technically sound, probably best suited to be a number 2 corner. Well, hey, you got Adoree Jackson on the other side. The Tennessee Titans in 3 straight years have, quite frankly, been lucky enough to have first-round prospects fall to their lap, and they've just sat there and taken them. You know, you got Harold Landry a couple years ago. Last year, A.J. Brown. This year, Christian Fulton. They have drafted really well in the second round in recent years. And they've really come a long way from being just a kind of good, solid, average roster to loading it up with like star players. As Harold Landry's come along, Jeffrey Simmons, I think, is going to be a big player next year. The development of Jackson, Byard, these linebackers. Like, this defense is really starting to look nice. The only thing they're really missing is that number 2 edge guy still. Maybe they go and get a Jadeveon Clowney to really make this thing interesting after the draft here. And then in the third round, they take Darrington Evans. We saw a lot of running backs come off the board before this that I do not think sniff the player that Darrington Evans is. He's explosive. Think about like Matt Breida here. Doesn't make a ton of guys miss, doesn't break a ton of tackles, but he will run away from you. And if you get good blocking in front of him, as they have here, offensively, this team, Matt LaFleur might be gone, but the remnants of the Shanahan scheme are absolutely still here. A lot of play action, outside zone. You know, this is almost inverse of what the Packers did. Evans isn't unlike Aaron Jones, whereas the Packers took their Derrick Henry in the second round. They value these kind of speedy guys that can get to the edge, get them in space. You know, that's kind of opposite of what you would think with Derrick Henry and A.J. Dillon, but when they reach their top speed, it's very difficult, and that's why outside zone is actually better for them as opposed to asking them to hit holes in the middle hard. This is a bit of a tangent, but slower starters actually aren't good inside runners because they don't hit the holes. The holes close by the time they get there. You actually want longer developing outside zones, and then by the time they hit their top speed, it's dangerous. So anyway, nice 1-2 punches. I still think Derrick Henry is on his way out after this year. Darrington Evans gives them a long-term answer, so I love that pick. Laurel Murchison, good value here in the 5th round. It's about a little after I had him going. He's a really good athlete. Definitely that 3-4 scheme fit. I like his game. I think that you put him next to Jeffrey Simmons, Jaquan Jones, Jack Crawford. They did lose Jarrell Casey. That kind of just gave him a way to clear cap space. But again, maybe they use that cap space to go get a Jadeveon Clowney after the draft. We'll see how it all plays out. But, I can get behind that defensive line, especially if they use that to maybe get Clowney in there on like a 1-year or 2-year deal. Cole McDonald in the 7th round, good backup quarterback pick. I don't know if he's the best fit for this scheme. I actually was not overly impressed with his arm strength. A lot of people said he's got a great arm. I didn't personally see it. Not like there's anyone in the 7th round that's going to be a great answer for that anyway. He's at least a smart guy that can come in if anything happened to Ryan Tannehill and not get lost. So, in a win-now season, spend a 7th round pick on a quarterback that I think fell a little bit. That's not a moron that can hold the show down for 2 weeks if Tannehill were to go down. My comp for Cole McDonald coming out was actually Nick Foles on my draft board. And then they grab a D-back out of Marshall. Chris Jackson was not actually on my radar, so I don't know much about him, but a dart throw at D-back. Okay, so an A- for the Tennessee Titans. Pretty good classes here, obviously, other than the Texans' whole trading fiasco. I think these teams all did a pretty good job, got a lot better, did a lot with what they had. It's going to be an interesting division next year. I think all 4 of these teams, especially with Jacksonville, they had an excellent draft. I think this division next year is going to be pretty competitive. Jacksonville's still going to be a long shot there, but I wouldn't completely rule any of these teams out next year. Should be one of the more competitive divisions. I wouldn't say best divisions, but definitely one of the more competitive divisions next year. So there you go. The full draft has been graded. Every single pick, every single team. Make sure you go back and catch any division that you missed. Please do drop a like down below if you enjoyed all of these videos. This one specifically, leave a comment what you think. I appreciate the support, everyone. Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace.